Hello and welcome to Gender Inclusive Housing Open House. My name is Eric Dent. I use he, him pronouns. I work in the Student Services Office, and I am here with a team of amazing people. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Angie Bradley. I use she, hers pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director for North Campus and Diversity Initiatives.
Hi, my name is Valeria, she, her pronouns, and I'm the specialist for student leadership and equity. Work with Angie.
Hi, I'm Crystal Visser. I use she, they pronouns. I am the communications and content manager for the Student Services Office, and I work directly with Eric.
Hello, I'm Val. I use she, they, and shall pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Director at the UW-Q Center, which is the LGBTQ Resource Center on campus. And I collaborate with these wonderful folks at Residential Life and HFS.
Thanks for having you. All right, so you have the opportunity to submit any questions that you have through the Zoom chat. There'll also be an opportunity at the end of the presentation that we will stop the recording and you can ask any questions that you like. So feel free to send out comments any way that you'd like. What is gender inclusive housing? Gender inclusive housing room options is intended to provide a welcoming and supportive environment for residents across the spectrum of gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual identity, and allied members of that community. What is a gender inclusive room? Gender inclusive spaces are rooms in a residence hall or apartment with a private bathroom. Gender inclusive rooms are located throughout the system. So that means if you are want to be a part of a LLC, or if you have want a room that has a specific rate type, we can do gender inclusive housing all over the spectrum there. So you can go in any of those rooms that you'd like. HFS does not have any limits on the number of students who are a part of gender inclusive housing. So lots of options. What is mixed gender housing? Mixed gender housing are rooms and apartments are an option for students who live with a friend of a different gender. The option is intended for people who want to live with their siblings or other relatives or other people or other persons of a different gender. And during this presentation, we'll talk more about the difference between mixed gender housing and gender inclusive housing. Here it goes right here. So mixed gender housing. One of the things that if you are part of mixed gender housing, it is a no commitment statement is required. Gender inclusive housing does have a commitment statement that is required. If you are a part of mixed gender housing, you can live with a person of a different gender. For housing, you do not need a mutual roommate. So we would assign that roommate for you if you don't have a person that you want to live with. For mixed gender housing, you must be a mutual request on the roommate, and both must have mixed gender housing requested. For gender inclusive housing, only assign roommates who have also completed the commitment statement and requested gender inclusive housing will be a part of gender inclusive housing. Kind of the basic difference between the two there. So who can apply for gender inclusive housing? How to request it. On your housing application, you'll select gender inclusive housing as the box there. What would happen from there is you would have there will be a link on the application that you'll need to complete, and that is a commitment form. So let's say that you want to have roommates. Um, you do not need to have a roommate. You do not need a roommate if you don't have one already. But if you would like a roommate, you would have to fill out your roommate request and put your roommate's information down. Your roommate would have to add you, and then both would have to fill out the commitment form for you to be assigned to gender inclusive housing together. How would the room be selected? You don't participate in room selection based off of the preferences that you put into the system. The people in the student services office will assign you to a room based um, preferences there. All right. So gender inclusive housing commitment statement. This is the one of those things that you need to take care of before you are a part of gender inclusive housing. It is critically important to us that gender inclusive spaces feel especially welcoming and supportive for students across the spectrum of gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual identity. Because of our strong commitment to inclusivity and safety in those spaces, we have high standards for students interested in. Ooh, let me pull this down a little bit. You must demonstrate your understanding of gender and what it means to be specially aware of needs of gender. Students in the process of discovering their gender identities or transitioning, students who do not wish to identify themselves by sex or gender identity, students who identify as outside gender binary, students whose gender identity is fluid, and students who do not conform to society's expectations to their sex assigned at birth. All right, so some of the other commitments when you are saying that you acknowledge this, I commit to actively maintain an living environment that is supportive of various gender identities, gender expressions, and sexual identities. I commit to furthering my knowledge on the subjects of gender, sex, and sexuality, and systems of oppression such as homophobia and transphobia, which directly impact students living in the community. Another commitment, I commit to acting in a way that reduces harm and contributes to culture of inclusion. And the final one, I acknowledge that I am submitting an interest form to live in housing and food services, gender inclusive housing, which is different from HFS mixed gender housing. All right, so we are going to have 3 questions on that commitment form. The first one is going to be describe your understanding of gender, gender identity, and gender expression. Second question, describe what it means initially creating a gender inclusive space in your assigned room. And 3, share any other comments or considerations for your assignment to gender inclusive housing. Next off, I'm going to bounce it over to our Res Life.
Thank you, Eric. All right, so I'm going to get into the residential life community involvement. So about programming, Residential Life organizes one social per quarter for residents living in gender inclusive housing, and residents also have access to all other on-campus programming. Shameless plug to REP and RPB. All right, so for community resources, so resident advisors will be facilitating social events and connection to other residents, sharing knowledge about campus and other resources, building a sense of community within the floor, and they can also be a conversation partner for processing the adjustment to college life. And they will also be conducting community walks and ensure that policies are followed. So those were the roles for our resident advisors or RAs, and they directly report to our community managers who are full-time staff members. And they can be an area director, resident director, associate hall director, or program supervisor. And the community manager's office is located in your building's residential life office or RLO or community center. So for community standards, it's important to be familiar and abide by the community standards and share in building and maintaining a respectful and productive living and learning environment for all. And the resident advisors and resident directors or community managers will also be upholding all of these community standards as well. All right, back to you, Eric.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so we have this same presentation in a sway that you'll be able to access. There are some excellent student experiences, and I would love for you to take advantage of reading through some of those different things so you can understand how folks that have been a part of gender inclusive housing kind of interacts with the housing and how they would speak about it. So I do want to bounce over and talk about some additional resources that are there. And I want to talk about the gender inclusive website that I just touched on. And then there is a band out there which is a roommate finder. So there is a queer positive band out there to find different roommates. Some of the other resources is the UW Q Center, and I'm going to take a pause here and let Val talk about the Q Center a little bit.
Thank you, Eric. As my introduction said, and if you're just joining us, a little bit of an overview. I'm Val. I use she and they programs. I'm the deputy director at the UW Q Center, and the Q Center is the LGBTQ multicultural resource and community center available to UW students, faculty, and staff on the Seattle campus. And a lot of our work involves collaborating with other departments and divisions like housing and food services and res life, as well as other student life units. And we do programming events, as well as campus-wide trainings and education for faculty and staff, as well as student groups, to familiarize themselves and learn a little bit more about LGBTQ experiences, supporting students, navigating their college experience, and also advocating for LGBTQ students and their well-being on campus. So that's a little bit of an overview of what we do. And then for a little background on our involvement with gender inclusive housing, we have monthly meetings with the HFS team and Res Life team where we consult and collaborate on different ways to support students like in their living and learning environments. I'll pass it back to you, Eric.
Wonderful. That sounds amazing. Thank you very much. And lastly, there we got the identity.uw.edu. That is a great website where you tons of information on there. Please feel free to go by and check that out. And if you ever have any other question, well, I was jumping one step ahead. So next steps. If you would like to be a part of gender inclusive housing, please first before you start setting up your 9 or 12-month housing there, review the housing application guides. You want to know what you're signing. Then you want to apply for housing. And while you're applying for housing, go ahead and check the box that you're interested in gender inclusive housing and complete the commitment statement. And then if you have any questions or you need anything from us, please reach out. We are in the Student Services Office in Lander Hall. Our email address is hfsinfo@uw.edu. We have our telephone number and our website on there. So if you ever do need anything from us or if you ever have any questions, please let us know. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'm going to let everybody ask any questions that they may have.